Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus Kirkpatrick. Once again, we are playing Where in the World is Cyrus? And the answer is a coffee shop in Hanoi, Vietnam. One of the few places I found with proper Wi-Fi. It's a bit noisy in the background. We have pop music playing. We have motorbikes on the street. You might hear some of that interference, so that's just a quick heads up. This video is a bit of an analysis of a conference that was presented by a man named Luis Elizondo. If you've been following this channel, you may know who he is. If you're new on this channel, we talk about complex, supernatural, paranormal topics, usually about life after death, out-of-body experiences, things like that. But we can find that things are converging together. So when we go into subjects like UFOs, extra dimensions, um, remote viewing and government programs, all of that is converging with the bigger idea of a non-materialist structure of society, and really it all links together. So once something happens, like an official spokesperson comes out and begins revealing that things previously ridiculed and derided via what I would consider to be very directed efforts by institutions to keep humanity in the dark. But once that starts being undone, it's going to be a domino effect. And so one domino is going to fall, and then, at the end of that domino chain, we will be living in a very different world. And so this Elizondo guy, very well-spoken guy, he appeared basically out of nowhere a couple of years ago, a Pentagon employee with an office in the Pentagon who was heading up a research group studying UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, a very obvious rebranding of the term UFO. Some footage was released that was given the seal of approval by a mainstream spook like this guy, and it's been widely criticized because where did this guy come from? Why is somebody from the US government now cozying up to UFOs? Are we receiving the full truth? I think anybody who studies this field will know the answer is no. There's a lot more obviously going on than what meets the eye, and then we're supposed to believe that this guy is, giving us the straight deal. Instead, what seems to be happening is Luis Elizondo is slowly rolling out the information in a way that's not going to cause widespread panic and uh, religious upheaval, things like that. And he even talks about that concept in this video, and that's what's so interesting about that, because he is almost directly spelling out what he's doing. So why is that so exciting? Well, it's really exciting because it uh, demonstrates that things are moving, right? So if this guy has, like, allegedly he retired from that position in the Pentagon, but he also implies, including in this video, that he didn't retire. He's still working in this field, and it's his job basically to be the PR spokesperson for what is a US government approved narrative of crazy subjects, and doesn't just include UFOs. We're also talking about remote viewing, stuff that his colleague Hal Puthoff has been historically involved with. So it's very exciting stuff. And so I'm not going to go through the whole video. I don't think it's pretty long, but we'll just kind of start off from this point. Up until this point, he basically works the whole room, thanks all the military service people who attended, and thanks to people who have much longer histories in the field than he does. Like, he's like this master schmoozer, master charmer, and the stuff that he says is interesting. Again, this is Luis Elizondo, a quasi-official U.S. government spokesperson on the topic of UFOs. Uh, Real quick, if you're new around here, if you like these kinds of discussions, please hit that subscribe channel. Really helps keep the channel going. This is a micro channel, and I need those subscribes basically to show the YouTube algorithm that we're relevant. You can also check out a lot of the work we do. We have a big Facebook group, all that kind of stuff to get involved with if you like this kind of stuff. Anyway, let's go on, play this video, and begin analyzing it. So this first part, it's really interesting. So let's take a listen.
Did it work?
Okay. A lot of people ask me, so Lou, do you think disclosure has occurred? And I think it has occurred, and I think it is still occurring. As I said before, I believe this is a process, it's not an event. I'm also asked, well, is this confirmation? Well, what does that mean? Because if you look at the word confirmation, the kind of...
So that's actually huge. So he said, disclosure is a process, not an event. That's exactly what analysts in this field have been talking about for a long time when they were saying that the whole idea is to slowly begin rolling the information out, as opposed to causing religious upheaval, societal upheaval, and whatnot by hitting everybody over the head with it, like with a sledgehammer. So the whole idea is to slowly begin that process, and there he is, an official spokesperson, basically confirming that that is what's happening. The disclosure is happening; it's being rolled out. And next he moves on to kind of like reframe what that means a little bit. Let's take a listen.
Gives the impression that there's some sort of underlying narrative to begin with that you're confirming. And I'm not sure we have that narrative yet. I think we need more data. I think we're in the process of building that narrative, and we do that through using the scientific method and collecting evidence and materials and doing the proper analysis on this in a way that can be peer reviewed and of course repeatable, right? That's what science is all about. So is this confirmation? In my opinion, and I'm going to caveat that it's only my opinion, and I don't like to give it very often, I don't think this is confirmation, because I don't think we have a narrative yet. And I'm very wary of going down any avenue where we have some preconceived notion of what something might or might not be already, until we have enough evidence to establish the facts. So December 16th, you all know better than I do what happened. The news got out, and everybody was talking about it. I would like to share with you some personal insight. I received a call from a very dear colleague of mine who's still at the Pentagon, who works this effort very, very closely. And so yes, read between the lines. When I say is working this, I don't mean in the past. Actively working this. So that means...
Okay, so when he says that the news got out in December 2017, what he means to say is that he's the one who got the news out. So it didn't like break out. Like this guy appeared on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, every major media outlet, Tucker Carlson, I think, everybody. And he was the one pushing it out, and he had a lot of money and a lot of people behind him. Not just this silly private organization called To the Stars. He had there was some serious help, and he got on all the media, and it was a push. And anybody watching the news back then would have seen that it was a push. So he's talking about some inside stuff that happens. Let's see what he has to say.
I would like to share with you some personal insight. I received a call from a very dear colleague of mine who's still at the Pentagon, who works this effort very, very closely. And so yes, read between the lines. When I say is working this, I don't mean in the past. Actively working this. So that means this effort continues. So congratulations, it's still going. And that too will come out, hopefully in a very official way sometime soon. But
okay, you gotta listen to that. So he's saying that this program is still going. So before he said that the program finished, I think it was Harry Reid who helped develop it, and it's done. He left, now he's working in the private sector, and then here he is saying that actually no, read between the lines, that's not really what's going on. It's still going, my colleagues are still in the underground level of this operation, and all of that's going to be revealed publicly very soon, according to what I assume are his bosses, which are most likely high levels in the Pentagon, in what we will call like the deep state.
I received a call from him very, very recently. Actually, it was this week. And he said, you know, Lou, it's funny because a conversation that I had to have with you just a year and a half ago in a vault within a skiff in a TSSCI facility that SAP cleared, and we had to whisper to have this conversation. I can now have this conversation in the open halls of the Pentagon. Imagine that, how far we've come. And so as we sit here today, I encourage you, look around, look at all these pictures around you. You're right now at the epicenter of where mankind, as a species, left this planet and went somewhere else, went to the moon. I was looking at some of these pictures, they're profound. In one picture, you have a dirt road with a few Model Ts and people walking along a dusty road. Just 40 years later, you have someone also walking on a dusty road, but it's not on this planet, it's on the moon. And he's in a spacesuit. So things happen, and because of people like you and the scientific community, science fiction becomes science fact.
If you see what he's doing here, because this is a private conference, but what he's doing, he's trying to butter up the scientific community. Like, if you look at some of the faces of the people in the audience, they're kind of like, yeah, you know, I don't know, it's almost like they're not fully engaged with what he has to say, because his challenge is that, even coming from an official capacity, people are so programmed that this stuff can't be real, that even when they hear it coming from an official mouthpiece and somebody with the credentials, somebody given the Pentagon seal of approval, they still don't want to believe it. They still can't believe it's real. And remember, folks, this applies to all the subjects in, in metaphysics or the supernatural, whatever you want to call it. So because we're so programmed, even when somebody comes out officially acknowledging all of it, by nature, it's as if we're taught not to care. And Elizondo, what he's doing is he's attempting to puncture a hole into that kind of psychology. And he wants to say, hey, it's all about peer review. It's about the open-minded power of science, and we're all here, and we're all in on this together, and this is what we're doing, and it's going to be great, and what can we get? What can we take away from this? What can we build from this? What can we advance? Like just forget about the whole ET concept for a second. Just think about the physics and the science. And it almost seems like this is a playbook of things that he has been told to talk about. Like these are his bullet points. He's been briefed. He's been told to approach it from this angle and get the scientific teams involved and speak at scientific conferences like this one.
And so anybody who would look at you with some sort of maybe tilted smile or something like that and say, oh, you talk about UFOs? What does that mean? Well, we don't know what it means, but you should probably pay attention because it is real. Now, what it is and how, what its intentions, all these other things, well, that's for smarter people than me to figure out. That's beyond me. But we have established the fact that they're real. And we have also established the fact that from a national security perspective, and we'll talk about this, I know some people are a little bit leery of the fact that I've always historically tied this to a national security threat, and we'll get to that. But you now have people at the highest levels of the United States government and international communities of their governments finally taking this serious, applying real resources, real talent, real expertise to look at this and finally figure out what this means. So congratulations. I think this is a historic event for everybody. To have a forum like this where everybody can sit down and have an honest conversation about a topic that has been so fraught before with skepticism and taboo, you've achieved a lot. Keep in mind, just 10 years ago, scientists still couldn't agree whether or not the giant squid of the Pacific really even existed, because no one saw one on camera. Until finally, enough washed up on a beach and enough showed up on deep sea cameras where now we realize, oh, you know what? There really are sea monsters.
This guy is so smooth. And even though everything he's saying is fake and it's pre-scripted and these are bullet points and this is a CIA operation, it doesn't mean that it's done with negative intent. And like the giant squid analogy, it makes a lot of sense. 10 years ago, we didn't know if the giant squid was real, and you go on the skeptic forums, and people would be saying the giant squid is a cryptozoological myth. It's an urban legend. And now, today, obviously, they wouldn't say that. Facts prove that there are indeed giant squid, and they've been washing up, probably because of all the plastic in the oceans. You know, find all kinds of cryptozoological creatures dying from uh, from eating Fiji water bottles. But I digress. So he makes an excellent point because what he's trying to do is say, you know, no matter how rigid something is, no matter how much we're programmed that it can't be real, it just takes some stuff to come out and get released, and then everything can change.
In the ocean, but they're actually a species. It's actually part of nature. It's not pseudoscience, it's just science. And so my time at the Pentagon, working with some fantastic human beings like Hal Puthoff and others, we approach this very much the same way. We approach this from a scientific perspective. We wanted to know what we could capture with empirical data, qualify it and quantify it, so that we can go ahead and take that data and try to figure out what it is we're dealing with. And so that's really it in a nutshell. This occurred, and my intention for leaving the Department of Defense, I would also like to clarify, it was not a matter of disloyalty. It was in fact loyalty why I left the Department of Defense in the first place. I am very, very loyal to the Department of Defense. If you look at my resignation memo, one of the very last things I told Secretary Mattis, you can always count on me to carry the water for DOD. I love my country. I love the Department of Defense. I believe in what we're trying to accomplish. But in order for me to accomplish and finish the very mission I was given, by the way, which I did not ask for, I actually had to leave my beloved department to finish.
So again, this is huge. Basically, what he's saying is that he didn't really leave the Department of Defense. His loyalty is still with the DoD. I think the music is getting louder in here. I might have to wrap this video up soon. But basically, what he's saying is that he's still with the DoD. He is probably still on their payroll. He's extremely loyal, and he had to leave his official position to be able to go out and tackle this from the private sector, because I guess they believe that that was the best way to go about the disclosure process. So again, that's huge. So this video, it continues for a long time. I don't want this video to be 3 hours long. And like I said, they're cranking the music up in this cafe. I don't know if they think it's a cafe or a nightclub, but probably can't. Probably need to take a break here anyway. I may do a second or third part of this video, but I will include the link to the whole presentation in the YouTube channel description, or the video description. You can click on show more to see that. And he goes on to talk about other subjects. He talks about the idea of the threat narrative. And if you've been following the subject, like with Stephen Greer, he's been warning about basically UFOs being considered a threat probably the last like 10 years. He said that, you know, they're going to come out and try to claim that these things are a threat to national security, and possibly plan some kind of a fake like alien attack, kind of like the War of the Worlds with Orson Welles back in the 30s. Because this would be one way to release the information and also be able to kind of gain control over the subject and prevent the technology from being released publicly if they're perceived as a threat. So he's been Greer has been very concerned about that for a number of years, and the one reason people are so distrustful of this Luis Elizondo guy is because, just like he predicted, suddenly a Pentagon guy comes on the scene and begins calling them aerial threats. And most people in this field will tell you that they are the vast majority of encounters with, I guess you could say, UFOs or extra-dimensional entities or technology is positive. Like there are these negative types of situations, and there are these negative entities, but the vast majority of it is positive, and so to label all of it as a threat is very disingenuous. And he does attempt to clear that up a little bit and say, well, from a national security standpoint, technically we have to call it that. Like, okay, so he attempts to walk that back a little bit. And he also talks about the concept of using this technology, integrating it into our own technology, so literally building technology by using the propulsion systems theorized. And obviously, anybody in this field will tell you that we already know about that. That's already been going on for many years. Some people would argue we even have working craft that have been outside of this planet that our the elite levels of our governments are already using. There's been a lot of insiders who have spoken about that. I would probably suggest going to Gaia TV and watching the show Cosmic Disclosure to learn about that. But at the end of the day, the feeling I get from all of this is very positive. I think that the government's in a position where it actually wants this stuff out there. It wants the technology to help out humanity. It wants, as is the name of this presentation, it wants a new paradigm to arrive. It's just stuck. The spooks don't know how to do it. They want to get the info out, but their analysts have told them that if you do it all at once, if you do it too fast, it's going to cause big societal level problems. So it has to be introduced to the public slowly. And in this presentation, this guy basically confirms all of that, which is really interesting. So again, this guy, a quote, official spokesperson of UFOs, this is what he has to say. If you like this kind of stuff, head to afterlifetopics.com. Shoot me a message and get involved. We have classes we do twice a week. We have the big Facebook group, and we have my books out there where I talk most predominantly about astral projection, out of body experiences, and things like that. So that's all stuff to check out if you like this kind of stuff. And stay tuned. I'll have more videos coming up soon.